The Nexus system had become a graveyard of metal and dreams. 3 massive fleets hung in the dark space around the system's dying star. Their weapons pointed at each other, like angry fingers. For 2 years, the Corvani Empire, the Veltari Confederation, and the Grim Horde had fought over this single system. The prize was worth the blood spilled. Whoever controlled Nexus controlled the trade routes that connected 6 major sectors of the galaxy. Admiral Thexvara stood on the bridge of her flagship, the Crimson Talon. Her scaled hands gripped the metal railing as she watched the enemy fleets through the main view screen. The Corvani had lost 40 ships in the last month alone. Her reptilian features showed no emotion, but inside, doubt gnawed at her like acid. How many more of her people would die for this system? Admiral. Her communications officer hissed. The Veltari are moving into attack formation. More. Veltari. More. 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 Thexvara nodded. The ethereal Veltari had always been the hardest enemy to predict. Their ships moved like ghosts, using their advanced energy shields to appear and disappear from sensors. High Priestess Zelaanith commanded their forces with the cold logic of someone who believed the universe demanded this war. On the other side of the battlefield, High Priestess Zelaanith floated in her meditation chamber aboard the cathedral ship Divine Purpose. Her translucent blue skin glowed softly as she reached out with her mind to touch the thoughts of her fleet commanders. The Veltari had evolved beyond physical forms long ago, existing as beings of pure energy inside crystalline bodies. To them, this war was a spiritual test. The strongest would survive and grow closer to perfection. The star paths show victory today, she whispered to her aide. The Corvani and Grim are weakened. We will claim Nexus and bring order to the chaos. But even as she spoke, doubt touched her thoughts. 2 years of war had brought death to millions across all 3 empires. The Veltari believed in harmony, yet here they were, spreading destruction across the stars. The contradiction troubled her, though she pushed such thoughts away. War Chief Braktul felt no such doubts. The massive leader of the Grim Horde stood 8 feet tall, his gray skin covered in battle scars. His people were warriors, born and bred for conflict. The bridge of his ship, the Iron Fang, echoed with the sounds of his officers sharpening their weapons and telling stories of past victories. Today we finish this, Braktul roared, his voice carrying across the bridge. The Corvani snakes and Veltari spirits think they can take what belongs to the Horde. We will show them the price of challenging true warriors. His officers cheered, but Braktul noticed something they did not. His fleet was smaller than when the war started. The Grim were fearless, but even they could not fight forever without rest or resupply. Still, he would never show weakness. The strong survived, and the weak deserved their fate. All 3 leaders shared one terrible secret. 50 years ago, their empires had worked together for the first and only time in galactic history. They had united to destroy a young species that had just discovered faster than light travel. The humans had seemed harmless at first, but their rapid expansion and strange ways of thinking had frightened the established powers. The attack had been swift and brutal. Human colonies were wiped out one by one. Earth itself had been bombed, until its surface glowed like a dying ember. The 3 empires had agreed that humanity was too dangerous to be allowed to survive. They had succeeded, or so they believed. No human ship had been seen in 50 years. No human signal had been detected. The species that had once shown such promise was gone, erased from the galaxy like a bad dream. The guilt of that genocide had driven the 3 empires apart. Unable to trust each other after their shared crime, they had become enemies. Each blamed the others for going too far. Each feared that someday another young species might learn what they had done and seek revenge. Now they fought over Nexus, but really, they fought over the shadows of their past. The system had become a symbol of everything they had lost when they chose destruction over cooperation. All ships, prepare for final assault, Admiral Thexvara commanded. Her voice carried across 200 Corvani vessels. Gun ports opened like hungry mouths. Missile tubes loaded their deadly cargo. This would be the battle that decided everything. High Priestess Zelanith raised her crystalline hands, and energy began to flow through her fleet. The Veltari ships shimmered as they prepared to phase in and out of normal space, their weapons charged with the power of captured stars. War Chief Broktul drew his ceremonial axe and pointed it toward the enemy fleets. His ships responded by firing their engines and accelerating toward battle. The grim way was simple. Charge forward and let strength decide the winner. The three fleets moved toward each other like ancient titans awakening from sleep. In minutes, the space around Nexus would explode with enough firepower to crack planets. Thousands would die in the next hour. The survivors would claim victory and rule the trade routes. But at what cost? As the first weapons began to fire, strange readings appeared on sensor screens across all three fleets. Something was out there in the dark, near the dead moon on the edge of the system. The readings made no sense. It was as if space itself was bending in ways that should not be possible. But the three fleet commanders were too focused on their battle to notice. They had made their choices long ago, and now those choices would play out in blood and fire among the stars. The battle erupted like a supernova across the Nexus system. Thousands of ships launched everything they had at their enemies. Laser beams cut through the darkness like angry red lines. Missiles streaked between the fleets, each one carrying enough power to level a city. Explosions bloomed like deadly flowers as ships died and became clouds of glowing debris. Admiral Thexvara watched her tactical display as green dots representing her ships moved against red and blue enemy markers. The Corvani were holding their own, but barely. Their plasma cannons were melting holes in grim armor, but the barbaric warriors kept coming. The Veltari ships flickered in and out of sight like ghosts, striking from impossible angles before vanishing again. Direct hit on the Iron Fang, her weapons officer reported. Their shields are down to 60%. Thexvara allowed herself a small smile. Maybe they could actually win this time. Maybe the nightmare of endless war could finally end. High Priestess Zela Neith felt the death of every ship through her psychic connection to her fleet. Each explosion sent waves of pain through her crystalline form. The Veltari were masters of energy manipulation, but even they could not fight two enemies at once without losses. Her beautiful cathedral ships were being torn apart by Corvani plasma and grim kinetic weapons. Channel more power to the phase drives, she commanded her bridge crew. We must strike harder before they overwhelm us. The divine purpose shimmered and suddenly appeared directly behind a Corvani battleship. Its energy weapons fired in perfect harmony, turning the enemy vessel into a brief star before it went dark forever. War Chief Broktul roared with joy as his ship shook from enemy fire. The Iron Fang was built for punishment, its thick armor plating designed to absorb damage that would destroy lesser vessels. Around him, his crew worked their weapons with the efficiency of a lifetime spent in combat. This was what the Grim lived for. This was their moment of glory. Ram the Veltari flagship, he ordered his pilot. Show these energy spirits what real strength looks like. The Iron Fang accelerated toward the divine purpose, its massive hull cutting through space like a thrown spear. Broktul planned to crash his ship directly into the enemy, destroying them both if necessary. It would be a warrior's death. But then something impossible happened. Space itself seemed to ripple near the dead moon at the edge of the system. The ripples spread outward like waves on a pond, but these waves bent light and twisted gravity. Every sensor in all three fleets screamed warnings as reality itself seemed to fold in on itself. What is that? Admiral Thexvara demanded. But her science officer had no answer. The readings made no sense according to any known physics. The ripples reached a peak, and then space tore open like fabric. Something massive emerged from the tear. Something that should not exist. It was a ship, but not like any ship the galaxy had ever seen. The vessel was enormous, easily 3 times the size of the largest battleship in any of the 3 fleets. Its hull was a deep black that seemed to absorb light instead of reflecting it. Strange patterns covered its surface, patterns that hurt to look at directly. Most disturbing of all, the ship appeared to be completely undamaged, despite emerging in the middle of the largest space battle in recent history. All fighting stopped instantly. Every weapon fell silent. Every ship's crew stared at their view screens in shock and growing fear. The mysterious vessel hung in space like a sleeping giant, dwarfing everything around it. Captain Jin Soo-min stood on the bridge of the Silent Guardian and looked out at the 3 fleets that had been trying to destroy each other moments before. Her dark eyes showed no emotion as she studied the tactical display. After 50 years of hiding, 50 years of watching from the shadows, humanity had finally decided to reveal itself. "Open communication channels to all 3 fleets," she ordered her communications officer. Dr. Elena Park stood beside the captain's chair, her tablet displaying psychological profiles of the 3 enemy commanders. She had spent decades studying the species that had tried to wipe out humanity. She knew their weaknesses, their fears, their deepest regrets. "Captain," her communications officer reported, "all channels are open. The entire system is listening." Jin nodded and stepped forward. When she spoke, her voice carried across space to reach the ears of millions of aliens who thought her species was extinct. "I am Captain Jin Soo-min of the human vessel, Silent Guardian. To the forces of the Corvani Empire, the Veltari Confederation, and the Grim Horde, you will cease all hostile actions immediately." The silence that followed was deafening. On 3 separate flagships, 3 different commanders stared at their communication screens in disbelief. Human. The word echoed through their minds like a curse from their darkest nightmares. Admiral Thexvara's scaled hands trembled as she gripped her command chair. Humans were supposed to be dead. They had made sure of that 50 years ago. Yet here was living proof that their genocide had failed. High Priestess Zelenith felt a chill run through her crystalline form. Her psychic abilities let her sense the emotional state of the human captain, and what she found there terrified her. The woman was completely calm, completely in control. There was no anger, no hatred, just cold determination. War Chief Braktool's first instinct was to attack, to destroy this ghost from the past before it could threaten the Horde. But something stopped him. Maybe it was the size of the human ship, or the way it had appeared from nowhere, or simply the fact that humans were supposed to be extinct. "Impossible," he whispered, and for the first time in his life, War Chief Braktool felt afraid. Captain Jin watched the 3 fleets on her display. She could see the confusion and fear in their formations as ships tried to decide whether to flee or fight. After decades of preparation, humanity was finally ready to step out of the shadows and reclaim their place in the galaxy. But first, these 3 empires would have to answer for what they had done 50 years ago. The abandoned trade station hung in space like a metal skeleton, its lights long dead and its corridors empty. Once, it had been a bustling center of commerce, where dozens of species came to trade goods and ideas. Now it served as neutral ground for a meeting that would change the galaxy forever. Captain Jin Soo-min walked through the station's main docking bay, her footsteps echoing in the vast, empty space. Behind her came Dr. Elena Park, carrying a portable data unit that contained 50 years of carefully gathered evidence. They were alone, except for 2 security officers who remained near their shuttle. "Are you sure about this, Captain?" Dr. Park asked quietly. "We could handle this differently. Show them our strength first. Make demands later." "Wing Dan. Wing Dan. Dan." Jin shook her head. "That would make us like them. Humanity survived because we learned to be better, not because we learned to be stronger." The 3 empire leaders arrived within minutes of each other, each bringing heavy security details. Admiral Thexavara came with 20 Corvani Marines, their plasma rifles charged and ready. High Priestess Zela Nith floated in, surrounded by her crystalline bodyguards, their energy forms crackling with barely contained power. War Chief Braktul stomped through the airlock with a full squad of grim warriors, their massive forms covered in battle armor. They met in what had once been the station's main conference room. The table was still there, though covered in 50 years of dust. Emergency lighting cast strange shadows on the walls as the four leaders faced each other across the metal surface. "You died," War Chief Braktul said without any greeting. His hand rested on the handle of his ceremonial axe. "We made sure you died." Captain Jin looked at him calmly. "You tried. You failed." And Admiral Thexvara's reptilian features showed confusion and growing fear. The records show complete success. Every human world was destroyed. Every ship was hunted down and eliminated. "How did you survive?" "Some of us escaped to the rim worlds," Jin replied. "Far enough away that your fleets never found us. We've been watching you for 50 years, learning, growing, far intense, preparing." She gestured to Dr. Park, who activated her data unit. Holographic images filled the air above the table. The images showed burning worlds, destroyed cities, and the faces of billions of dead humans. "New Terra," Jin said, as the first image appeared. "Population, 4 million. You bombed it from orbit until the surface turned to glass." Admiral Thexvara flinched as she recognized the plasma scoring patterns. Those were Corvani weapons. The next image showed a space battle, human ships trying desperately to escape while alien vessels hunted them down. "The Exodus fleet," Jin continued. 200 ships carrying families, trying to reach safety. You caught them at the Aldoran jump point. High Priestess Zalanith watched her own ships in the recording, their energy weapons cutting through human vessels like knives through paper. She had led that attack personally, believing it was necessary to preserve galactic stability. More images followed, colony after colony, fleet after fleet. Always the same story: humans trying to live in peace, and the three empires working together to destroy them. "Earth," Jin said softly as the final image appeared. It showed humanity's home world as it burned, its blue oceans boiling away, and its green continents turning to ash. 5 billion people. You didn't even try to evacuate the civilians. War Chief Braktul straightened in his chair. You were a threat. Young species always become threats if they're allowed to grow too strong. We did what was necessary. Necessary? Dr. Park spoke for the first time, her voice filled with controlled anger. We were explorers and traders. We wanted to join the galactic community, not conquer it. Your expansion rate was too fast, Admiral Thexvara said, but her voice lacked conviction. Your technology was advancing too quickly. The modeling showed you would dominate the galaxy within 200 years. High Priestess Zelanith floated higher, her crystalline form glowing brighter. The star paths showed chaos if humanity was allowed to survive. We acted to preserve cosmic harmony. Captain Jin let the silence stretch for long moments before responding. You acted out of fear. Fear of change. Fear of competition. Fear of losing the power you had built over thousands of years. She touched a control on the data unit, and new images appeared. These showed the aftermath of the human genocide. The three empires turning on each other. Decades of mistrust and conflict. The slow breakdown of galactic civilization. Look what your fear accomplished, Jin said. 50 years of war between former allies. Millions dead. In conflicts that serve no purpose except to feed your guilt and paranoia. The very chaos you thought you were preventing. Admiral Thexvara stared at the images of Corvani ships, burning in battles against her former allies. We thought we were protecting civilization. You were protecting your own power. Dr. Park corrected. And in the process, you destroyed the trust that held the galaxy together. War Chief Brocktool slammed his fist on the table, denting the metal surface. Enough talk. You're here, which means you want something. Speak plainly, human. Captain Jin nodded. Accountability. For 50 years, you've told yourselves that what you did was necessary, that it was justified. But deep down, all of you know the truth. You committed genocide because you were afraid of losing your power. She stood up, her small human form somehow commanding the attention of all three alien leaders. Admiral Thexvara, you've spent 50 years fighting wars that serve no purpose except to distract your people from questioning your past decisions. High Priestess Zelenith, your pursuit of cosmic harmony led you to create the greatest disharmony the galaxy has ever known. War Chief Brocktool, your strength was built on the murder of innocents. The three leaders sat in stunned silence as Captain Jin continued. You can't undo what you did. The dead can't be brought back. And if we refuse? Admiral Thexvara asked quietly. Captain Jin smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Then, you'll learn that humanity learned more than just survival during our 50 years in exile. We learned how to make sure genocide never happens again. The meeting room fell silent, except for the hum of the station's emergency power systems. Outside, 3 fleets waited for orders from leaders who were finally being forced to face the truth about their past. Captain Jin Su-min stood at the center of the conference room, her hands clasped behind her back as she looked at each of the 3 Empire leaders in turn. The weight of 50 years of human suffering and growth rested on her shoulders. But her voice remained steady and calm. You want to know what humanity has been doing for the past 50 years? She asked. We've been building something better than what you destroyed. Dr. Park activated her data unit again, and new holographic images filled the room. These showed thriving worlds at the galaxy's edge, beautiful cities that blended technology with nature, and ships unlike anything the 3 empires had ever seen. New Earth, Jin announced as the first image rotated slowly above the table. Population: 2 billion. We learned from our mistakes. This world can support 20 billion if needed, but we chose balance over endless growth. Admiral Thexvara leaned forward, studying the architectural designs that seemed to flow like living things. Those building techniques. How did you develop them so quickly? We had help, Jin replied simply. When you destroyed our colonies, some species helped the survivors escape. Others felt guilty for not opposing the genocide. Over the years, 47 different species have joined our coalition. High Priestess Zelenith's crystalline form flickered with surprise. Impossible. No coalition has ever grown that large. The political complexities alone would destroy any alliance. Dr. Park smiled for the first time since the meeting began. That's because most alliances are built on shared interests or mutual benefits. Ours was built on shared principles. Every species in our coalition believes that genocide is wrong, that diversity makes civilization stronger, and that differences should be celebrated, not feared. War Chief Brocktool snorted in disbelief. Pretty words. But 47 species means 47 different agendas. Your coalition would fall apart the moment it faced real pressure. Captain Jin touched another control, and the images changed to show vast shipyards hidden in nebulae and asteroid fields. Hundreds of vessels moved through space, but these ships bore no resemblance to the brutal warships of the 3 empires. They were sleek and graceful, designed for exploration and protection rather than conquest. The Terra Coalition Fleet, Jin announced. 800 vessels, all crewed by volunteers from across our member species. Every ship is equipped with technology that makes your most advanced warships look like toys from a child's game. She gestured, and one of the ships in the hologram began to demonstrate its capabilities. It phased in and out of normal space, like a Veltari vessel, but faster and more smoothly. Energy shields flowed around it like living light. Most impressive of all, weapons emerged from its hull that seemed to bend space itself. You've been watching us, Admiral Thexvara said, her voice barely above a whisper. All these years, you've been studying our technology, learning our weaknesses. We've been studying everything, Doctor. Park confirmed. Your military tactics, your political structures, your cultural blind spots. We know more about your empires than your own leaders do. Jin walked around the table, stopping behind each leader as she spoke. Admiral Thexvara, the Corvani Empire is facing internal pressure from younger generations who question the endless wars. Your military is stretched thin across too many fronts, and your economy is struggling to support the war effort. The reptilian admiral's scales paled as Jin continued. High Priestess Zelanith, the Veltari Confederation is split between those who support your military actions and those who believe you've lost your spiritual way. Your own council debates removing you from power. Zelanith's glow dimmed noticeably, but Jin wasn't finished. War Chief Braktul, the Grim Horde is facing the worst crisis in its history. Your people are dying faster than they can reproduce, and the constant warfare is destroying your culture's ability to raise the next generation properly. The massive warrior chief slammed his hand on the table again. But this time, the gesture seemed more desperate than angry. How could you know all that? Because we've been watching and learning, Jin replied. But more importantly, because we care about the future of galactic civilization. Even after everything you did to us, we still believe in the possibility of peace. She returned to her position at the head of the table and activated the final holographic display. This one showed a map of the galaxy, with hundreds of red zones marking areas of conflict and instability. This is what 50 years of guilt-driven warfare has accomplished, Jin said. Trade routes destroyed, entire systems depopulated, and 3 once great civilizations slowly destroying themselves out of fear and shame. The red zones on the map seemed to pulse like infected wounds across the galaxy's spiral arms. We're offering you a choice, Jin continued. The Terra Coalition can end all of this. We can mediate peace talks, help rebuild what's been destroyed, and create a new galactic order based on cooperation instead of fear. And if we refuse? War Chief Braktul asked, though his voice lacked its earlier defiance. Jin's expression remained neutral, but her words carried the weight of absolute certainty. Then, we'll do what's necessary to protect innocent lives. We won't commit genocide like you did, but we will remove you from power and find leaders among your people who are willing to choose peace. She gestured to the hologram, and it zoomed in to show the Nexus system where their fleets still waited. As a demonstration of our capabilities, we're going to disable your 3 flagships simultaneously. No permanent damage, no loss of life. Just a clear message about the difference in our technological capabilities. Admiral Thexvara started to object, but Jin held up her hand. It's already happening. Through the station's viewports, they could see the 3 massive flagships in the distance. Suddenly, all 3 vessels went dark. Their engines shut down, their weapons powered off, and their shields collapsed. The ships began to drift helplessly in space. Your crews are unharmed, Jin assured them. Power will be restored to life support and basic systems momentarily. But your weapons and engines will remain offline until you make your decision. Dr. Park stepped forward with 3 data tablets. These contain our full proposal for galactic peace. Take them back to your people. Discuss the options with your advisors and your populations. But decide quickly. Jin checked her chronometer. You have 24 hours. After that, the Terra Coalition will begin implementing peace with or without your cooperation. The 3 Empire leaders sat in stunned silence, each holding a tablet that represented either the salvation or the end of their civilizations. Outside, their mighty fleets waited helplessly in the dark, powerless before technology they couldn't understand. For the first time in 50 years, the choice between war and peace was no longer theirs to make alone. The 24 hours passed like a lifetime for the 3 Empire leaders. Each returned to their disabled flagship to find their crews confused and frightened. their mighty vessels reduced to floating habitats in space. But more importantly, each leader faced the hardest decision of their life: continue down the path of endless war, or accept help from the species they had tried to destroy. Admiral Thexvara stood in her ready room aboard the Crimson Talon, staring out at the stars while her senior officers argued behind her. Half wanted to fight the humans despite their obvious technological superiority. The other half begged her to accept the peace proposal. "Admiral," her second-in-command said quietly, "I've run the tactical analysis 3 times. If the humans can disable our entire fleet without firing a shot, what chance do we have in a real battle?" Quote, APN has centered Harding to a 50. Thexvara turned away from the viewport. In her scaled hands, she held the data tablet Dr. Park had given her. The peace proposal was more generous than anything she had expected. The humans weren't demanding surrender or revenge. They were offering partnership, shared technology, and a chance to rebuild what 50 years of war had destroyed. "I've made my decision," she announced to her officers. "Send word to all Corvani ships. We're going to try something we haven't done in 50 years. We're going to choose peace." On the divine purpose, High Priestess Zelaneth floated in her meditation chamber, surrounded by the crystalline forms of her most trusted advisors. Her psychic connection to her people allowed her to feel their confusion and fear, but also their desperate hope for an end to the seemingly endless warfare. "The humans offer us a path to true harmony," she said, her voice carrying through the crystal matrix that linked all Veltari minds. "For 50 years, we have sought cosmic balance through destruction. Perhaps it is time to seek it through creation instead." Her advisors pulsed with different colors as they debated. Some argued that accepting human leadership would be a betrayal of Veltari superiority. Others pointed out that their current path was leading nowhere except to more death and chaos. "The star paths have been clouded since the genocide," Zelanith admitted. "Perhaps that was the universe's way of telling us we chose wrong. I will accept the human proposal and pray to the cosmic forces that we can find redemption." War Chief Broktul faced the greatest challenge of all. The Grimm culture was built on strength and dominance. Accepting help from former enemies went against every instinct his people possessed. But as he looked at the faces of his warriors, he saw something that terrified him more than any human weapon: doubt. His daughter, War Chief Miratul, stepped forward. She was young for a Grimm leader, but she had earned her position through combat prowess and tactical genius. "Father," she said, using the formal address required in front of the War Council, "our people are dying, not just in battle, but in spirit. We have forgotten what we fight for, because we can only remember what we fight against." Broktul looked around the council chamber at his most trusted advisors. These were warriors who had never known defeat, yet now they looked beaten. The endless war had drained something essential from the Grimm soul. "Perhaps," he said slowly, "true strength lies in knowing when to stop fighting." The decision split the Grimm War Council in half. Some demanded that Broktul be replaced for showing weakness. Others supported the proposal, arguing that extinction was the only alternative. In the end, Miratul challenged her father to ritual combat for leadership of the Horde. The fight was brief but brutal. Broktul was older and more experienced, but his daughter represented the future of their people. When she finally stood over his defeated form, he smiled with genuine pride. "The Horde accepts the human proposal," Miratul announced. "Under my leadership, we will learn what it means to be strong, without destroying others." Captain Jin Sumin received all 3 responses within minutes of the deadline. She stood on the bridge of the Silent Guardian, watching the 3 fleets begin to stand down from combat readiness. Around her, the bridge crew worked quietly to coordinate the massive task of organizing galactic peace talks. "All 3 have agreed to the proposal," Dr. Park reported. "Admiral Thexvara seems genuinely committed. High Priestess Zelaneth is treating it as a spiritual journey. The Grimm situation is more complicated, but the new war chief appears to understand what's at stake. Jin nodded as she studied the tactical display. Begin Phase 2. Signal the coalition fleets to decloak. 1. Great. All. Across the Nexus system, space began to ripple as more than 200 human and allied vessels revealed themselves. They had been hidden for days, watching and waiting to see if the three empires would choose peace or require more direct intervention. The sight of the massive coalition fleet sent shockwaves through the three empires. These weren't just human ships, but vessels from dozens of different species, all working together with a coordination that seemed impossible. To the Empire crews, who had spent 50 years fighting endless wars, the display of unity was almost magical. Open channels to all three fleets, Jin ordered. It's time to begin the real work. Her image appeared on every view screen in the system as she began to speak. Today marks the end of 50 years of pointless warfare and the beginning of something better. The Terra Coalition doesn't seek to rule you or replace your governments. We seek to help you remember what you were before fear and guilt consumed your civilizations. Over the following weeks, the Nexus system was transformed from a battlefield into a center of hope. Representatives from 47 different species arrived to help mediate the peace process. Engineers from the Coalition worked alongside Empire crews to repair damaged ships and stations. Most importantly, counselors and teachers began the slow work of healing the psychological wounds that 50 years of war had created. Admiral Thexvara found herself working with a human engineer named David Kim to redesign Corvani plasma weapons into tools for terraforming dead worlds. High Priestess Zella Anith learned meditation techniques from a telepathic species that helped her reconnect with the cosmic harmony she had lost. War Chief Miratul trained with Coalition Marines, learning combat techniques that emphasized protection over destruction. The process wasn't easy. There were setbacks, arguments, and moments when it seemed like old hatreds would destroy the fragile peace. But every time tensions rose, someone would remember the choice they had made and the future they were trying to build. 6 months after the human warship had decloaked in the Nexus system, the three Empire leaders signed the Galactic Cooperation Treaty. The ceremony took place aboard a new space station, built jointly by all 47 Coalition species plus the 3 former enemies. Captain Jin Suman watched the signing from the observation deck, Dr. Park beside her. "Do you think it will last?" the doctor asked. Jin smiled, and this time it was warm and genuine. "People said the same thing about humanity when we were nearly extinct. They said we were too broken, too scattered, too traumatized to survive, much less rebuild." She looked out at the ships from 50 different species working together in perfect harmony. The galaxy tried to destroy us because they were afraid of what we might become. Instead, they gave us the chance to become something better than they ever imagined. Below them, former enemies worked side by side to build a future where genocide would be impossible because diversity was too valuable to destroy. Humanity had returned to the galaxy not as conquerors, but as teachers, showing others that strength came not from the power to destroy, but from the wisdom to create. The unknown human warship had decloaked, and the galaxy would never be the same.